Across thousands of miles and thousands of years, civilizations that never met each other told the same terrifying story. The world was destroyed by water. From ancient clay tablets to sacred scriptures and surviving oral traditions, echoes of a global flood surface in places once thought too remote to influence one another. How did such a precise tale emerge independently across continents, carved into the origin myths of humanity? That mystery begins here. On a clay tablet over 3,000 years old, an ancient voice speaks from the heart of Mesopotamia. The story begins with Utnapishtim, a wise man living in the city of Shuruppak on the banks of the Euphrates. The gods, troubled by the clamor of humanity, convene in secret. Enlil, the chief god, decides that the world must be cleansed with water. But Ea, the god of wisdom, quietly warns Utnapishtim of the coming disaster. The message is clear: build a vessel, gather your family, and preserve the seed of all living things. Utnapishtim's instructions are precise and strikingly unusual. The boat is not the familiar shape of a ship, but a massive cube, its length, width, and height all equal, 7 decks stacked one atop another. For 7 days, Utnapishtim and his workers labor, sealing the craft with pitch and loading it with gold, animals, and every kind of life. When the flood comes, darkness covers the land. For 6 days and 7 nights, wind and water rage. Even the gods, watching from above, grow fearful of the destruction they have unleashed. When silence finally falls, Utnapishtim opens a hatch and releases a dove, then a swallow, and finally a raven. Only when the raven fails to return does he know the waters have receded. He steps onto dry land and offers a burnt sacrifice atop a mountain. The scent pleases the gods, and Enlil, once angered by humanity, now grants Utnapishtim and his wife immortality as a reward for their obedience and survival. This account, carved into Tablet 11 of the Epic of Gilgamesh, preserves a flood narrative centuries older than the Hebrew Bible. Its details, like the cube-shaped vessel, the 7-day interval, and the ritual offering, set the foundation for a pattern that will echo through flood stories across continents and generations. Noah's story, preserved in the book of Genesis, stands apart for its mathematical precision and the scale of its ambition. The text describes a world grown violent and corrupt, prompting God to announce a coming destruction. Unlike the cube-shaped vessel of Utnapishtim, Noah's instructions are direct and technical. Build an ark 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. In modern terms, that is a ship over 400 feet long, longer than a football field, built from gopher wood and sealed inside and out with pitch. The ark is not a ship designed to sail, but a floating refuge, a massive rectangular box built for survival. Noah is told to bring his wife, his sons, and their wives, and to gather every kind of animal, male and female, in pairs, so that life might continue after the flood. The text repeats the instructions with a sense of urgency and gravity, emphasizing the completeness of the destruction and the care taken to preserve each species. For 40 days and 40 nights, rain falls without pause. The waters rise, covering even the highest mountains, and every living thing outside the ark perishes. Inside, Noah and his family wait in darkness, surrounded by the sounds of animals and the relentless drumming of rain on the roof. The narrative lingers on the duration, not just the 40 days of rain, but the months spent adrift before the waters finally recede. When the ark comes to rest on the mountains of Ararat, Noah steps out into a cleansed world. God sets a rainbow in the sky as a sign of a new covenant, a promise that such a flood will never come again. The story's focus on measurement, logistics, and divine promise gives it a distinctive character. It is not only a tale of destruction and survival, but also one of order and renewal, and the forging of a relationship between humanity and the divine. This attention to detail, from the ark's exact dimensions to the pairing of animals, marks the biblical account as both deeply practical and profoundly symbolic, setting it alongside but also apart from its Mesopotamian predecessor. In the Sanskrit texts of ancient India, the world's fate turns not on the anger of gods, but on a quiet act of compassion. Manu, a sage devoted to ritual and law, draws water from the river to wash his hands. In his cupped palms, he finds a tiny fish. The fish pleads for protection and warns Manu that a great flood will soon sweep away all living things. Moved by the plea, Manu shelters the fish in a jar, then a tank, and finally releases it into the river as it grows. The fish, now revealed as the god Vishnu in his Matsya avatar, instructs Manu to build a sturdy boat and gather the seeds of every plant, along with the 7 sages of the Vedic tradition. The Satapatha Brahmana, composed around the 7th to 6th century BCE, records these instructions in careful detail. Manu's boat is built, and as the flood waters rise, the fish returns, now immense, with a golden horn. Manu ties the vessel to this horn with a sacred rope. Guided by the fish through the swirling waters, the boat drifts safely until the flood subsides. When the waters recede, Manu finds himself on the slopes of the northern mountains. There he offers a ritual libation, and from the seeds preserved in his boat, life springs forth once more. This narrative, distinct from its Mesopotamian and biblical counterparts, centers on a divine animal guide and the deliberate preservation of life's diversity. The focus on seeds, rather than pairs of animals, reflects a culture rooted in agriculture and ritual order. The story's preservation in the Satapatha Brahmana ties the flood not only to cosmic renewal, but to the rhythms of sacrifice and the responsibilities of a just ruler. Manu's actions become the foundation for a restored world where survival depends on wisdom, foresight, and a bond with the divine that is both protective and instructive. In the chronicles of early China, the story of Yu stands apart, not as a tale of total destruction, but as a record of struggle, ingenuity, and survival. Ancient texts describe a world overwhelmed by relentless floods, where rivers burst their banks and entire regions vanished beneath water. For generations, communities endured chaos and famine as the land refused to yield to human control. Gun, Yu's father, tried to hold back the deluge with dams and magical earth, but his efforts failed. The waters only grew more unruly, and Gun paid with his life. Yu approached the disaster differently. Instead of resisting the flood, he worked with it. Over years, he traveled the length of the Yellow River, digging channels and dredging silt by hand, and with the help of villagers. The legends say Yu spent 13 years shaping new paths for the water, never returning home, his feet scarred and calloused from constant work. His success was not only technical, but political. By taming the flood, Yu won the trust of the people and the approval of the rulers, paving the way for the founding of the Xue dynasty. Recent geological studies offer a striking parallel to this legend. In the Jishi Gorge, sediment layers tell of a massive outburst flood around 1920 BCE. Analysis of gravel deposits and radiocarbon dating show that a landslide dam once blocked the upper Yellow River, creating a vast lake. When the dam finally gave way, billions of tons of water surged downstream, scouring the landscape and depositing thick layers of silt across the floodplain. The scale of this event matches the chaos described in the ancient texts, suggesting that the story of Yu may preserve the memory of a real catastrophe. This narrative, rooted in both myth and sediment, reveals a different kind of flood story, one where survival depends not on divine rescue or a single chosen family, but on collective effort and the promise of order restored through human action. In China, the flood becomes a test of leadership and the foundation of the state itself. In the highlands of Mesoamerica, time moves in cycles, not lines. The Maya and Aztec traditions speak of worlds that rise and fall, each age ending in destruction and renewal. In these stories, water is not just a force of chaos, but a boundary between worlds, a memory of beginnings and endings written into the very shape of the cosmos. The Popol Vuh, the sacred text of the Quiché Maya, tells of creators who fashioned people from wood. These first beings could walk and speak, but they lacked hearts and devotion. Displeased, the gods sent a great flood. The wooden people were swept away, their bodies scattered, their voices silenced beneath the waters. Some survivors, transformed by the deluge, became monkeys, reminders of a world that failed and a lesson for those who followed. In the Aztec accounts, the cycle repeats. The world has lived through 5 suns, each destroyed in turn by jaguars, wind, fire, or water. During the era known as Nahui Etiel, the sun of water, the gods unleashed a flood that drowned the earth. People caught in the rising tide were changed into fish, vanishing from the land as a new sun began its journey across the sky. Only a man and a woman survived, sheltering inside a hollow tree. But when they disobeyed the gods' command, they were punished with silence, the origin of language's many forms. Mesoamerican codices, painted centuries before conquest, capture these cycles in vivid images, water pouring from the mouths of deities, swirling around temples and mountains, carrying away the old world as the next takes shape. Archaeological studies of Lake Texcoco and the Maya lowlands reveal that real floods and sudden lake rises once reshaped these landscapes, echoing the stories told in glyph and song. Here, the flood is not a single event, but part of a cosmic rhythm, an endless dance of loss, transformation, and the hope of beginning again. In northern Australia, Yolngu elders remember a time when the sea swallowed their ancestral homelands. Their songs and stories describe waters advancing from the east, drowning islands and hunting grounds until only the highest places remained. Along the southern coast, Gunditjmara communities speak of a great water rise that forced their ancestors inland, away from the rich fishing camps now hidden beneath the waves. These oral traditions, passed down over thousands of years, carry memories of real changes, coastal lands lost as the last ice age ended and sea levels rose. Geological studies confirm that between 10,000 and 6,000 years ago, the oceans climbed more than 100 meters, flooding vast stretches of Australia's shoreline. Shell middens and stone fish traps now rest underwater, silent witnesses to a world transformed. Across the Pacific, similar stories echo from island to island. Polynesian legends tell of floods that reshaped entire archipelagos, while Maori accounts recall ancestors fleeing rising tides. These narratives, preserved in chants and carvings, point to a deep continuity between lived experience and cultural memory. Anthropologists and geologists have traced these motifs to the period of rapid sea level rise that ended around 6,000 years ago, suggesting that these stories may encode first-hand observations of environmental upheaval. When these accounts are placed alongside the flood myths of Mesopotamia, India, China, and the Americas, a striking pattern emerges. 5 motifs appear again and again: a warning of disaster, the selection of survivors, the building of a vessel or refuge, the preservation of life, often animals or seeds, and the renewal of the world after the waters recede. Whether told through cuneiform tablets, painted codices, or spoken word, these elements form a shared vocabulary of catastrophe and hope. The endurance of these motifs across continents and millennia invites a deeper look at how memory, environment, and imagination shape the stories we tell about the end and the beginning of the world. Flood stories surface in every corner of the world, carved into ancient tablets, painted on codices, and sung in languages that never met. Their echoes raise a question: how did such similar tales emerge across continents and centuries? 4 main hypotheses have shaped the debate, each offering a distinct perspective and its own limitations. Cultural diffusion traces the journey of stories along the same routes that carried obsidian, spices, and bronze. In the Bronze Age, seafarers and traders moved not just goods, but ideas, rituals, technologies, and memories of disaster. Archaeological finds, such as Near Eastern seals on India's coast or sewn plank boats linking the Mediterranean and the Indus, suggest that myths could travel as far as people did. Yet this explanation falters when flood stories appear in societies with no evidence of ancient contact, like the Americas or remote Pacific islands. A second hypothesis turns to the mind. Psychologists and mythologists, from Carl Jung to Claude Lévi-Strauss, argue that certain stories arise independently because they reflect shared human experience. Jung called these recurring patterns archetypes, symbols rooted in the collective unconscious. The flood becomes a metaphor for chaos and renewal, a way to process upheaval and transformation. Structuralists see these myths as tools for resolving opposites, order and disorder, destruction and creation. Here, the similarities are not borrowed but built from the architecture of thought itself. A third proposal focuses on adaptation. In flood-prone regions, river valleys, coastal plains, and monsoon belts, stories of deluge may have evolved as warnings, encoding practical lessons about survival, leadership, and cooperation. These tales blend memory with instruction, helping communities remember past disasters and prepare for future threats. The fourth hypothesis, geomythology, suggests that some flood stories preserve the memory of real, extraordinary events. Catastrophic floods, like glacial bursts, tsunamis, and sudden sea level rise, can leave scars on the land and on collective memory. Geological evidence from the Black Sea, the Yellow River, and Australian coasts has prompted researchers to ask whether myth can sometimes serve as a record of upheaval. Yet the path from sediment to story is rarely direct. Oral traditions stretch, reshape, and endure. Sediment cores from the Black Sea shelf record a transformation etched in silt and shell. Around 7,600 years ago, a marked shift in microfauna appears. Freshwater species vanish, replaced by marine forms. This abrupt change forms the backbone of the deluge hypothesis, advanced by William Ryan and Walter Pittman in the late 1990s. Their model ties the event to the end of the last ice age, when melting glaciers raised global sea levels. As the Mediterranean overtopped the Bosporus, salt water surged into the Black Sea basin, possibly raising water levels by up to 100 meters and flooding vast stretches of fertile land. Radiocarbon dating of the marine layers pinpoints this incursion to about 7,600 calibrated years before present, matching the rapid post-glacial sea level rise seen in coral and oxygen isotope records. Freshwater mollusk shells disappear beneath thick marine sediments, while chemical signatures confirm the transition. Seismic surveys trace submerged river channels and ancient coastlines now hidden beneath deep water. Some estimates suggest the shoreline retreated by as much as 100 kilometers within decades. Yet the evidence is far from conclusive. Other studies, using the same core samples and seismic data, propose a slower, staggered rise. In these interpretations, the Black Sea's transformation unfolded in phases, not a single catastrophic flood. Archaeological sites along the ancient shoreline show continued human presence before and after the supposed deluge, complicating the idea of sudden mass displacement. Radiocarbon dates often cluster ambiguously, and dating marine samples remains fraught with uncertainty. Globally, sea level curves show that between 12,000 and 8,000 years ago, oceans rose more than 30 meters, reshaping coastlines from Australia to the Americas. These changes spanned centuries, not days. The geological record suggests a patchwork of regional floods and gradual inundations, not a single world-destroying event. The Black Sea stands out as a compelling case, but the data demand caution. The story remains unresolved, a dialogue between sediment, tradition, and the search for meaning in catastrophe. Flood stories endure not just as echoes of ancient trauma, but as living reminders of how humanity confronts upheaval through memory, myth, and meaning. As rising seas now redraw coastlines for millions, these old narratives feel newly urgent. The line between history and legend remains blurred, but our challenge is clearer than ever. How we tell the story of survival shapes how we face the storms ahead.